Do.
Books and things and books and friends.
Welcome, everybody, to Questco Book Club, the first of, I assume, infinite numbers of book clubs.
Dear God.
My name is Joseph Leitis. To my left, I have...
Delaney Keith.
I'm looking at...
Jonah Jackson?
And...
Sarah Jackson.
And...
Andrew Johnson.
And I'm Joseph Leitis. And this is Questco Book Club.
I know you as a person, but for some reason I thought that you were going to say, and I'm Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
I'm not Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I've never been, and I don't intend to be, because I'm me.
Why? I just felt that coming.
And being yourself
Anthony
is...
Hopkins.
Being yourself is Anthony Hopkins.
Being
And
yourself
me,
is Anthony Hopkins.
Ursula K. LeGuin.
That's
Oh
right.
my God, she's here. We necromanced our way into an interview with the author.
Just like me, Andrew.
And I'm Alan Watts.
And we're going to talk about A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. LeGuin. Ursula, it's so good to have you on the call. I adore you. You were such a formative influence in my youth. My uncle gave me A Wizard of Earthsea probably when I was about 14, maybe 13 years old, so just bar mitzvahed. And it blew my mind. I have sort of translated that mental illness onto all of the people here. So now you all are kind of in my boat.
I feel freshly bar mitzvahed.
You're freshly bar mitzvahed. You are a man in the eyes of the Lord. Now you guys have all read A Wizard of Earthsea, and you are all just a man in the eyes of the Lord. I'm probably going to cut all of this.
That's good. Here, Joe. I'll give you a strong in. You ready?
Okay, ready.
Here it comes.
A Wizard of Earthsea by Ursula K. LeGuin.
Thank you very much.
Can you get a little bit closer into the... Can you eat the mic a little bit more and say O'Giant?
Did I hit it?
That's what I'm looking for.
It looks good on my wavelength.
This is Wizard ASMR.
Hey, that would be,
here
pun
I am.
intended, magical.
I am going to, very closely to the mic, I'm going to list off all of the true names of the things.
I'm close.
You can't
my
do
Wizard
that.
ASMR.
That is in the wrong hands. That is not what a wise man would do. Hey, let's talk about this book, Joe.
I was about to say.
This is not how this intro went in my mind, but it's okay.
You had a beautiful intro planned.
No, I super didn't.
I wanted to hear it.
I didn't know what it was going to be, but this was not it.
So we have all read A Wizard of Earthsea, which is a very slim, very powerful fantasy novel by Ursula K. Le Guin that came out, when would you say?
68.
68. It's one of my favorites. I'm so excited to hear what you all think about it. Obviously, there's going to be spoilers and stuff. We're going to be discussing some of the themes because this is like a true blue book club. But I want to take this opportunity to beg, nay, to implore our listeners, if you like wizards, if you like life, if you like art, if you like us, if you like the way that we sort of do our shit, or really anything, if you like anything, you'll probably like Ursula K. Le Guin's A Wizard of Earthsea. It is truly beautiful. It's an extremely fast read. The audiobook I hear is pretty darn good. I think Jonah and
thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah, and Sarah enjoyed the audiobook. And I want you to
very
pause.
deep-toned man that just
He's a very deep-toned
is like
man.
every character is the same, but they are powerful.
Yeah.
They're all very powerful.
Go read this book. Find it. As David Mitchell says, drink up this magic, drown in it. And then press play on this podcast and come talk to us about it.
Can I add, if you've been bitten with books about wizards before, like Harry Potter, if you're reluctant to start this, it is so different
It's
in
its
such
own
a
thing,
beautiful way. I had slight reluctance, but I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I did too, because reading.
Well, I would say that, I mean, especially if you're somebody who enjoys Harry Potter and things of that nature, I mean, this book, as far as what I have read and looked into, kind of kicked off the whole wizard school trope.
Oh, yeah.
It's the first I've seen of it.
Absolutely.
Unless you go into reading it expecting British wizard school, because it is not that.
Super not.
Right. It's not British wizard school, but
It's
it is
incredible.
wizard school, and it did develop the whole magical school trope. From what I've read, it seemed like this was the first really popular iteration of that.
Yeah.
Totally.
Which was really, really cool, but very different from Harry Potter. So don't expect Harry Potter, but it is definitely like a cornerstone of that sort of genre.
So if you like Harry Potter, or if you don't like Harry Potter, chances
way,
are you'll
You
like this
reading.
book.
If you like wizards, if you like magic,
Yeah, let's hop right into it. Listener, if you want to get spoiled on probably my favorite book of all time, go ahead and keep listening to us talk about it, and then go read it. But otherwise, pause it, get it on Audible or something, and we're going to hear the opening paragraph by Delaney Keith.
Ooh. I'm also going to read the opening quote you will see whenever you open the book. Only in silence the word, only in dark the light, only in dying, life. Bright the hawk's flight on the empty sky. The Island of Gaunt, a single mountain that lifts its peak a mile above the storm-racked Northeast Sea, is a land famous for wizards. From the town in its high valleys and the ports on its dark, narrow bays, many a Gauntishman has gone forth to serve the lords of the archipelago in their cities as wizard or mage, or looking for adventure to wander working magic from isle to isle all of Earthsea. Of these, some say the greatest, and surely the greatest voyager, was the man called Sparrowhawk, who in his day became both Dragon Lord and Archmage. His life is told in the Deed of Ged, and in many songs, but this is a tale of the time before his fame, before the songs were made.
So, what's this book about? It's short, right? Like, it's surprisingly short, but what do you think it's about?
I think it's a coming-of-age story in my mind, But gosh, I mean, it's about somebody you know from the beginning is going to be somebody in a position of power, but it's not about when they were powerful, but the journey there.
The person in their development. And we hear all these huge words right from the first paragraph. We already know. It's kind of interesting because it almost takes away some of the unknown narrative quality and is more like a tale, right? I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, it's like, okay, you know that he's going to turn out all right.
Yeah. Hey, this cool-ass dude? Let me tell you how he got started.
Yeah.
What I loved so much about that opening paragraph, right? Because I remember listening to it in the Audible book and being like, okay, tell me more, right? To me, we're sitting around a campfire and let's tell a story, which fits into the world, right? Like, it feels like I'm on one of these islands in this, island world. Yeah. You know what I mean? It feels like a story around a campfire, which is, to me, so exciting versus so many other things, right? Like, I was instantly hooked because I was like, oh, I know where the story's going.
Yeah.
I think one of Ursula's distinct skills is her world building, because I was able to think about this world when I wasn't reading it during the day. I haven't felt like this about a book in a long time. I've really enjoyed a lot of books I've read recently, but this was one that I would read it at night and think about it all the next day.
So the world of Earthsea itself is this massive archipelago. Countless nations, countless islands, all with their distinct cultures, histories, and such, that have all sort of grown and developed in their own time, basically only separated by distance and water. So sailing is such a huge part of this world, and so many references are made to the sort of separate, almost city-states or whatever, that just exist on their own because they are across a channel of water. And what that kind of leads to is that there's not like these sort of, superpowers that you often see in fantasy, where it's just like, this is Gondor, they control all of this land. This is Rohan, they control all of this land. From the beginning, you are kind of thrust into this massive cultural, I guess, what would you even call it? It's
almost very like Greek city-state.
Yes.
Right? Where it's like everybody has their little piece of thing and their own country, but like you aren't big enough to really have any sort of power to go do stuff unless you're like two countries in this book.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise you're just like, well, there's wizards and we farm.
So Ged, we learn, is this sort of village lout. He's this young man. He has an abrasive and cold father. His mother has died, way, way, way before the events of the book. And he's just this...
He's our protagonist.
Yeah.
Well, he's a parent's dead, so like, gotta be
the protagonist if you got a dead parent.
A young farm boy with a dead parent.
Well, a blacksmith's son, actually, and it's sort of described him, like, working hard at the bellows and, like, having, like, this grueling sort of life. Herding goats, and sort of growing up kind of rough and wild and sort of impetuous and, I would say, rude. Like, Ged does not start out Captain Perfect. How would you describe, Andrew, since you've now read the first 3 books?
Yeah.
How does Ged start this? Because we are literally seeing, the beginning, the Freudian origins of this character.
Well, so, like, for me, it's one of the things that I think I like most about this book. Like, frankly.
Yeah.
I love Harry Potter, right? I will be honest and say I didn't read a single Harry Potter book. I just watched the movies because I'm not a huge reader. But, like, the thing that I always struggled with, like, Harry Potter was, like, that he's kind of just a golden child the whole time. Mm-hmm. And even when everyone frames him for murder, he's still kind of a golden child, right? Like right. That doesn't really change. Like, there's a lot of learning. This isn't me dogging Harry Potter. Like, it's an amazing thing, right? The thing I love about Ged, right, is Ged is a blacksmith's son, farmhand, gets trained by his witch aunt, who's like, who's literally like, I hate this kid, and then he talks to a bird because he heard her doing it, and she's like, okay, well, you might be useful, little buddy.
You might have some
right? Like,
magic in you,
and then tries to enslave him.
But
right.
Yeah, he starts off in such like a bright-eyed, bushy-tail way to me in the book. Like, it's just like, I'm Ged. Like, I imagine him as like the protagonist of Fable, right? Like there's obviously like pumpkins in the shot or something in every shot he's in. But like, and I don't know how much we want to talk about like what all happens in the book and when it happens, right? But like,
whatever you want.
He falls immensely, right? And it's because he's talented. And I think that is such a cool thing that we don't really see a lot of, because I think us as Americans see ourselves in that, so we avoid it.
Right.
I feel like Ged is immensely talented at the beginning of this book. Like, in every way. He's like root memorizing like everything. Even Ogion, who is like, Joe, you say it best. What is Ogion's moniker?
Ogion, he who holds the earthquake on a leash. That one?
Oh, yeah.
Right. That's his first teacher, right?
Right.
Is this guy that's his nickname. And this guy's like, this kid's going to be way more powerful than me, right?
It's interesting because, like, the first time that we really see Ged, literally within the first chapter, we introduce him, we sort of see where he's coming from. He's living in poverty. His aunt, who doesn't really like him, is a witch, who's very low-born, not educated, but is like the local healer, sees that he has power, tries to be like, you serve me now, and it doesn't work. Like, the child, like, she's trying to like bind him to her service opportunistically, and he just like, it doesn't even affect.
He's like, what are you doing?
He literally laughs.
Yeah. He laughs.
Well, I remember
yeah.
in that first paragraph, in that first chapter, immediately all of these things start happening. Like, the pacing is so good.
Yeah, she does not wait
No.
to get to the meat and the heart of the story. Like, in the first 5 minutes, I was like, wow, I got a lot from that already, which is not normally the case.
Oh, yeah, when he saves the
there's
town
literally
from
an
invasion, and you're like, whoa.
Like, that was cool. Going back to the world building, Delaney, you're so transported immediately into the world that she doesn't have to waste time explaining the fields and the flowers and the fauna because you already know where you are. Like, she uses her words so wisely.
It's interesting. It reminds me a lot of Robert E. Howard, who wrote Conan.
Yes.
Both of them, I feel like, took directly from real-world inspiration and just changed names. I think it helps you with your imagination.
Yeah.
Because, right, she gives a name of someone, but then describes Vikings. And it's like, okay, I'm envisioning these guys in longships, right? All I needed was the one word, longships, and I've painted a huge picture.
Yeah.
Because that's, like, I can it's where, like, I get so bogged down when I try and read fantasy that is on the dimension of Gizgraxnia.
Right.
And you're like, is this World of Warcraft? I don't know what's going on.
But I love Gizgraxnia.
Everyone's got weird names. It doesn't make sense. Like, I love that there's, like...
So hard to relate
tangible.
to.
Yeah. It's tangible,
like
and I can be like, oh, it's Vikings. Cool.
Yeah. I also hate books that over-explain, like authors that feel like they need to over-explain to you. And I think Ursula's quoted saying something like, they will go with you.
Yes, I was just about to say, the distinction that she makes about fantasy and science fiction, both of which were like genre titles that she didn't really like, you don't need to convince somebody that magic is real. They're reading the book because they want to read a book about wizards.
Yeah.
So all you need to do is make things internally consistent. You have to have an internal geography of the world, and then you don't have to reinvent mathematics, right? You don't need to. You can just say, through implication, this is the setting, this is the guy. Oh no, his village is under attack. So Ged, through cleverness and wit and in the spur of the moment, rather than just going off with his basically the only family and people he's ever known in this tiny little villages to die at the hands
running
of...
off or staying and dying because his aunt bails. She's like, I'm out.
She's out of there.
She's like, I'm gonna go hide in a cave.
Yeah, rather than just like putting on like a tin pot on his head and dying next to his father in the street, he thinks like, what is the only magic I can really do? And he weaves a fog that it like covers the entire village, and through that they're able to, like, because the people in the village know the village, they can operate pretty well without seeing, but the raiders are completely repulsed. There's like 3 or 4 villagers that die, but they fight off like an armed band of like
it's like 3
people.
deaths to 100 kills. It's like insane.
Oh, man.
Like lead them off
KD
a cliff.
ratio off the charts.
I can literally look up in my texts when I was reading that chapter, because I texted Joe and I was like, the imagery.
Yes.
It was like the way like the mist rolls in and like everything, and then like how it's like the mist bails out and the villagers are like, we did it, and then like Ged's dead.
Here's the thing.
And they're just like,
Ged was strong, smart, and clever in the moment, but he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing because he hasn't had any training.
Right.
And he does it, and he falls down unconscious, like dead to the world except for like shallow breathing. Here comes a giant.
An upcoming theme that comes through many times in this book.
It happens a lot of times.
Ged getting totally wrecked.
Can I side note us real quick, since we're kind of like right
it.
to a place? I wrote down a bunch of quotes when I was listening to this, because like that's how I go through books just in general. Like I went through Les Mis once and I took like 15 different highlighters with me on that journey, because it was just like, okay, Hugo, say magic words, right?
Yeah.
And there's a theme in this book that I want to talk about, because I think for me it's why I was like, I have to read book 2 and 3 and keep reading until this series is done.
Yeah.
God, I feel like I'm just going to use Harry Potter as an example a bunch, so I apologize if anyone really loves Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter too. I feel like in Harry Potter, right, everything's a time crunch, right? And everything has to happen now, and you have to get what you're getting now, right? And something that this book talks about, especially with the introduction of Ogion or Ogion, or I only know it as Ogion because that's how the dude pronounced it in the book.
That's probably
Joe
correct.
grew up reading it, so it's like whatever. The theme of like knowledge and patience versus pride and power, and like, thank you, Sarah. I love that clap.
That little clap emoji in the Zoom chat.
It's where it's like what I was talking about with Ged. He goes on this like really strange wizard prodigal son story. He is everything. He's the guy, the dude that holds the earthquake on the leash is like, this is the guy. This is the next arch wizard, right?
This is gonna be the
Literally tells that to the Archmage. Like,
yeah, he like
this guy's
sends
gonna be
him
Archmage.
the letter, right?
Yeah.
But he also like like, I'm a sucker for the Merlin character, right? In the hero's story, right? I'm a sucker for old Ben Kenobi. Yep. I'm a sucker for the guy that's like, hey, you have a lot of power, move slow, or else you're going to make a huge misstep. You're going to try and fly way too fast, right? And that's what Ogion does, and that's what Ged does, right? Like, Ged has the moment where it's like, can I leave Ogion? And he's like, I probably shouldn't, but man, do I just want to be a powerful wizard?
Yeah.
Right? And like, he's that age. And it's like, okay, I get it, right? His return back to Ogion, to me, was the most fascinating part of the book. Not even going to talk about it yet, but like, Ogion quote, have you never thought how danger must surround power as shadow does light? Ooh, ooh, tasty, but also topical. Topical to life.
Yeah. Efficient.
To light a candle casts a shadow.
There was so much beautiful language around that character's introduction that I was instantly like, I don't even care about Ged. I was like, I want Ogion's spin-off story. I want to know how he got his name.
Oh,
right?
keep reading.
Oh, good. Yes.
Keep reading out.
Ooh, good news.
Ooh. So,
but,
Ogion.
yeah.
So who's this guy, right? He shows up, Ged is dead, unconscious in this sort of coma thing after saving the entire village and maybe earning his father's approval. Not really. Whatever. We'll find out.
Kind of.
No, we won't find out. He's laying there unconscious, and who comes out but like the resident wizard of the capital of Gaunt, the biggest city, which is not a very big city, called Rayalby. And this wizard's name is Ogion. He walks up, having heard like the tales of this magical feat, finds Ged like in his coma and heals him like with a word. And this is where Ursula talks about like one of the most important factors of Earthsea, which is the person's true name. What is the true name of a person versus like their use name? Because up till this point, Ged's name isn't Ged. It's been Dooney, right?
Dooney. And occasionally Sparrowhawk?
Yeah.
Well, like there's power in knowing someone's true name. And that when they know their true name, they're like fully known by that person. And that's how the wizards are able to hold so much power, by knowing those true names and speaking them, which is just deep and so deep on real life.
It's a magic of words, right? Like,
oh, yeah, that's the spells. Yeah, like, that's magic.
All magic of like,
genius.
You know, telling a goat to follow you is like using the goat's true name. And similarly, people have true names.
To me, it's so a much more intelligent version of what they did in Skyrim with like the dragon language.
Right.
Where it's like the dragon language and the magic they did was just their words and the power behind their words. This is like a much more thought out version that kind of riffed off of.
Yeah. What I find so fascinating is Ursula used ancient methods of magic, lore about magic. I was listening to this Alan Watts podcast who uses Taoism as one of his center points of his philosophy, which is another thing that Ursula K. LeGuin follows. But in ancient magic, knowing the true name of God gave you magical powers, essentially. So that's why, in science, naming things like plants or whatever, finding the true name meant that you actually had power over it.
Like, how literal can you make knowledge as power?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Where it's like this book has a lot of, and I don't think it's by coincidence, but biblical things that it kind of like parallels with, in the sense of like you were saying with like ancient magic, right? Like knowing words meant you had that power. Knowing a true name, we still talk about, right, in many different religions, right, what a person's true name is versus like what they were called at birth. Like that's a real thing that's still talked about today. My sister, who is a child therapist, talks about that, right? Like, I don't know, this is just Andrew's hot take. Let me get out of my own corner here for a second, but like I think we've just renamed magic as the world has gotten older. I know that's a fucking weird take, but like
I agree.
I think we've just come up with different names for it. We're just like, oh, we know what electricity is now.
Yeah, I think
and we call it this.
It's a system, right? Like the idea is that there's this world out there and we don't really have anything that accurately captures it except it, right? It is so big. It is everything. What it really.
Right.
And instead of just sort of gibbering and foaming at the mouth, what we do is we create little nets. We create little words that capture meanings of part of it. And we divide this part of it and that part of it, right? This part of it I'm looking at is what we call a computer. But what it really is a shit ton of silicon and atoms and a whole bunch of other shit that I couldn't even begin to like actually describe unless I just called it the one dumb word, computer.
Exactly.
But if you knew every one of those things' names and how they work, you'd be able to put it together and make it work.
That's what
right. Well, the true name.
The truest IT manager.
It's so interesting to think about because we all.
Sorry. Delaney, please.
Imagine the magnificence of seeing a sunset for the first time and then coming up with 2 syllables. Sunset. I don't know. I feel like sunset's not the true name.
Right.
But like, I love her take on this magic because to me it's so much different than everything else, right? It's not just a Latin word.
Right.
Right? It's not just a Latin word that sounds kind of cool and you wave a wand, right?
Abracadabra.
It's like, it's this intricate thing that is also intimate. Like, right? Like, there is an intimacy to like being able to do magic, and there is like
a vulnerability.
There is an exchange.
Yeah.
Right? It's what I loved coming back to like when O'Giant first finds Ged. When he brings him back to life, it is not easy on O'Giant. It looks easy. And then when Ged dies the next time, right, it kills a man to save him. It kills the Archmage to save him, right? So like there's
that was so heartbreaking.
There is an exchange to do magic, and there's an intimacy there, and I think that is such a... I'm going to come back to this theme 1,000 times, Joe, so just stop me whenever you want. But it's where, like, knowledge and patience is so much more powerful
Right.
than like what we think of, which is power. When you are patient and you have the knowledge to be patient and know what things are, then you can take your time with those things. Ojayan doesn't need to kill himself to save Ged because he has the knowledge to bring him back and the patience to do it when he needs to do it.
So what we're kind of seeing here is that there is a way of doing things that wizards, especially Ojayan, the ones that can do great things, like as he's called, it's not explained, but he's called the wizard who holds the earthquake on the leash. Whoa, holy shit. We don't know what that's referring to or how,
so
but
cool.
that's his reputation on Gaunt, and he's like revered as such, just this old man. And of course, as soon as he names Ged and is like, I will take you as my apprentice, and Ged's like, hell yeah, I want to learn magic. They're walking through the woods and shit, and Ojayan doesn't say shit for like 20 miles.
Days.
So
like
good.
days.
So good.
Just walking through the woods.
Doesn't say a word.
He'll just like stoop and pick up like leaves or like look at an animal or whatever, and just like walking through like this giant mountain island on his way back to his hut where he lives with goats and a dirt floor. That's it. Because he's a wizard, and Ged's like, what the fuck? If I was a wizard, I would live in a castle or a big tower and everybody would follow me or whatever. And basically we have this realization on Ged's part that Ojayan can do all these things, but doesn't for some reason.
Chooses not to.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna like fast forward, zoop a little bit.
No, you're good. Can I just
this.
Can I give you a Ged quote?
Yeah, please.
From literally that spot in the book.
Yeah, please.
Right?
Yeah.
I love this because this to me summed up Ged, and I was like, oh, no, this little shit. I remember thinking it.
This little shit. Yeah.
Because I was like, my boy. And then he said this line, and I was like, no, son.
Mm-hmm.
He was like, what good is power when you're too wise to use it? And I was like, use a dummy.
That looks like an antithesis to me.
But like, also, we've all been there. Right?
Yeah.
We've all said that in one way or another.
Well, it's a fair
point
question.
In our life.
Yeah.
If you are impoverished, if you like, you know, if raiders come to your house or whatever, you're going to be like, no, I want to use my magic powers and send them into the fucking ocean off a cliff or something.
It's
not
also
like
the ego talking.
Yeah. But
Yes.
Ged fucks up. He tries to impress somebody. He has an ego, and a young village girl who Ojayan warns him is the daughter of a local witch, a local sorceress, gets him basically to break into Ojayan's library and try to find a spell to raise the dead. And he's like, yeah, I can do that. I'm a strong wizard. All I have to do is read this book, and that'll let me do it. Mickey Mouse Fantasia style. And something bad almost happens. Or maybe it does happen.
Well, he wasn't looking for that spell in the book.
He wasn't.
They talked about it, but he was looking for like a shape change spell. But then he just happened to turn the page onto that one and then was like, I can't stop reading this.
That's right. Yeah.
I literally cannot stop reading this.
As
but
if his future
it had been
was
talked about, but
connected
he
to
was
him.
looking for something else. But he knew about it and then turned to it.
I also love that in the book, that event is a whisper of what's about to happen.
Yes.
Exactly.
And then you
Yes.
find out later from it's Ojayan, right, that tells him when he re-meets up with him that he's like, nothing actually happened then.
Yeah, it didn't
Right?
work. Nothing happened.
Just like what happened was like a preview of what was going to happen.
And I think
Yes.
A shadow of the shadow.
That was your
Something was
future
hunting you.
connected to you.
And it was going to happen.
And it
Like,
I think that is more than anything what she's trying to get across. It is the fact that it is Ged's personal, whatever you want to call them, pathologies, failures, this little shit, like that sort of thing. whatever it is that we see in Ged and go, uh-oh, that is what propels the action of Earthsea. It propels his behavior, his mind. What he does and what he chooses with his power is what eventually causes Ojayan to have to save him, then close the book and say, look, you're untrained. I have patience. You need patience. But honestly, I feel like maybe you should just go to wizard school and see what they can do with you. I know personally that you would benefit most sitting with me and sitting in the woods and not saying shit for like years and basically becoming like a monk. But I can see that you are hungry and, you know, your ambition lies elsewhere. So I'm going to give you the choice. Go to wizard school on Roke Island or stay here with me, which I recommend. What do you want to do? And Ged, because he is motivated by power and external things like that, at least in this moment, a personal need for magic, for potency, he goes to Roke.
I was so sad when he went to Roken and chose that instead. I was like, no.
Yeah, but also,
I wasn't.
as much as I would have read it, that book would have been boring as hell.
That's what I was like. I was like, of course, that's the only choice.
Yeah, well, because then
Totally.
Because then
but
you wouldn't
also,
have fucked
like,
up.
Like what I love about that choice, right, is we the reader know the right choice because
Yeah.
we know how wise O'Giant is. We know no matter where you are in the world, whether or not you've heard the Arthurian story, right, you know he's Merlin.
Yeah.
Right.
You know you do what Merlin says if you want to succeed.
I will say I hardcore identified with Ged in that moment because
No,
I'm like,
yes.
you know, being young and ambitious and realizing you come from this village all your life, you've known nothing but farming and working for your blacksmith dad, and then you find out you have all of this power, this immense power. Then you're stuck with this wizard who barely speaks to you, isolated in the mountains. Maybe you see a goat every once in a while.
Yeah.
Of course you're going to go to this fancy wizard school you hear about.
That's
And
what I was going to say. Like,
hell yeah.
when you look at Ged's life, right, and you look at, like, the way he gets treated differently after saving the village,
Yeah.
right?
Gosh,
The way, like, now you're special. And, like, when you think about, like, when we think about that in American terms, right, it's not that big of a deal because everyone was told they were special. But when you think about it in, like, medieval terms, right?
Big
You're a
deal.
goat herder. You'll always be a goat herder. You'll die a goat herder, right?
Actually,
Like,
you're a kind of a demigod. Like, you can kind of just bend reality.
you can bend reality, right? Like, that's...
I'm not gonna hang out in the wizard hut.
No.
How would a 13 if any of us think 13-year-old us would have gone with O'Giant, you're damn wrong. I love
You're a
O'Giant
liar.
and I would not have gone with O'Giant.
There's a moment
Yeah.
when Ged actually considers, he doesn't, it's not that he's about to, but
why I
he's
love
like,
it.
oh shit, I just realized I love this old
love him.
man.
Yeah.
It's like, oh shit, I thought I was just bored by him, but actually he's like very sweet and present and silent, and he's just living his life, and it's kind of, it's not what he wants, it's not Ged's want, but he can see that there's something there, there's something to that. But he doesn't choose it. He chooses to go to Roke, wizard school, it's fucking awesome, he sees Nemerly and all that stuff, and here, to me, I have to read
Fucking
this.
lit.
So I have to read this part. Everything that we're talking about magic and what magic is and what it is in the world, and that strange sort of thing that you don't really see often, which is that not only does a stone have a true name, people have a true name. A goat has true name, and then Jeff has true name. And also magic requires true name, and also Frankie has a true name. So what is it that we are also nameable as like an island or some water or a wind or whatever? And this is what it is. When we talk about Taoism, this is what Ursula K. LeGuin is doing with this magic. This is where Ged has gained entrance to the school on Roke and is waiting to meet the Archmage. The court was partly paved with stone, but was roofless, and on a grass plot a fountain played under young trees in the sunlight. There Ged waited alone some while. He stood still, and his heart beat hard, for it seemed to him that he felt presences and powers at work unseen about him here. And he knew that this place was built not only of stone, but of magic stronger than stone. He stood in the innermost room of the House of the Wise, and it was open to the sky. Then suddenly he was aware of a man clothed in white who watched him through the falling water of the fountain. As their eyes met, a bird sang aloud in the branches of the tree. In that moment, Ged understood the singing of the bird, and the language of the water falling in the basin of the fountain, and the shape of the clouds, and the beginning and end of the wind that stirred the leaves. It seemed to him that he himself was a word spoken by the sunlight. Do you guys know the cosmological models of the world, like how different religions think of what is the universe? There's the ceramic model of the universe, right? The idea that we are clay, and God, or some god or collection of gods, fashioned us from dirt, basically, and through him breathed life into us, and we are like his fucked up little boys running around and sinning and like breaking windows and stuff, right? We are like his sort of puppets, or not puppets, but like creations, I suppose. And as such, we are kind of like these subservient things that
Controlled.
we not only do we owe our existence to this creator, but that that creator will take away, give more, take away whatever at whatever whim, and our existence is only ever sort of at that pleasure. And then atheist sort of, or more rationalist or scientific modes of thought began to come into play, and they were like, well, we don't like this ceramic model. We want this sort of cleaner, more scientific model that we can rely on, which is that the entire world is just a collection of atoms. There is not a creator, and we are the sort of random chance upspringing of these atoms and stuff, and as randomly we will be like wiped away by them. The world is something outside of us. It is dangerous. It will snuff us out in a cold, uncaring universe, and we ourselves are kind of like these little things that don't feel like they belong in it and of it, but more are like being embattled by it and surviving and foraging for food and water. Alan Watts kind of lays out these things, the philosopher that Delaney was talking about. And that's like the sort of prevailing Western philosophies. I think we kind of lead more towards like the kind of atheistic one, even, you know, in modern day when people wouldn't often identify as such. It's just sort of
like the world is being inflicted upon us.
Yeah, like we are sort of enduring it. In Taoism, which is what Ursula based this on, that everything the universe does, us included, is holy because it comes from it. You're not separate from it. You are the curlicue on the end of processes that started with the Big Bang or before. And in the same way, Ursula is saying that every single human being in Earthsea, all magic, all stones, all water, everything is part, are words in a vast stream of words. And sometimes those words stop. Sometimes that word gets replaced by another word. Sometimes that tree falls down and that word is no longer there. But it is all part of this stream, this endless essay, this huge word being spoken by existence, reality. It's it.
Everything is it.
And there's nothing outside of it. There's nothing, kingly about it. There's nothing evil about it. It is just everything, and everything is of it. And this is why wizards don't want to use their magic. Because they understand that as one of the few entities in Earthsea that can actually change and use words to change a meaning of a word, that they are changing all of creation every single time that they use magic.
I really love, I don't remember who said it, but I love in the book where it talks about, I think there's a diamond and another stone that's brought up. Oh,
when he's talking to like the teacher,
yes.
And he's asking why he can't just change
it.
the rock into a diamond,
right. He's
and
like,
just it stay.
Why wouldn't I just change it to a diamond? Like a diamond's cooler.
Yeah, why do an illusion?
A diamond's prettier than this. It's worth more money, whatever. The way the teacher explains it is so beautiful and says that because then there wouldn't be this rock. I don't remember what rock it was.
Yeah, if the island was made of diamonds.
Same importance.
The masters, the teachers, the ones that like are in the highmost positions of power, generally, at least, especially in this first book, tend to be people that are like, I could do that, but why? Like, why would I? Or like, what would that serve it? Mm-hmm. Right?
I think the exact quote or something along the lines when he asked that question of the teacher is something like, ask a wizard for his secrets and he will talk of light and shadow and the balance of things, was his response to that. I'm like, oh, of course. Yeah, you too. Okay, yeah, I shouldn't do.
Innumerable are the arguments of wizards.
Balance.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the thing that Ged completely fails to understand, which is that there is good reason at times not to do things, and to do something to change the entire picture is an act of great moment. They say something like rain in the reaches means drought in the farther in the west, right? Or a storm here in Havnor means peaceful waters in Roke or something.
Balance, right? Like that if you do something on one side of the world, even changing a rock to a diamond, it could potentially have catastrophic effects on the other side of the world because you have just toyed with the balance.
Right.
The whole world is precarious, and you've just gone, I'm just going to play around over here on this one, right? And like, unless you know what's going to happen to the other side, you shouldn't be playing around with the stuff on this side. And to me, that's really the lesson that Ged has to learn the hard way.
Because
he raises a spooky ghost from the dead.
Yeah.
Not a ghost.
For no reason other than to show off his power and because he's prideful.
Yeah, there's a guy named Jasper. He's a real shithead. Andrew always calls him, what'd you call him? Dickhead?
I don't remember.
Dickhead.
I'll find
His
I'll
name
find
is
the text and I'll
Jasper.
tell you.
Yes, he's the Gary Oak.
Yeah.
He literally...
He shows up and he's like, hi, I want to beat your Pikachu into the ground. And you're like, oh, this guy, okay. There's always
it's
one.
even worse
Okay.
because he's like, oh, I'm the son of the Lord from Havnor Port or something like that. And Ged's like,
What would you know of the son of the Lord of Havnor and what he can or can't do or wants? or
direct
whatever?
quote.
I love it because Jasper never technically says anything rude. He just
True.
provokes Ged. And Ged says there is something about him, about the way he is, that provokes Ged.
There's so many things about Ged that are like so worrisome at other points, like his pride and his just like truly like unreasonable hatred of like Jasper and, you know, this lust for power that like, even though, and I think that this is such a great thing about the writing, is that even though you know from the beginning, okay, he's gonna turn out okay. We know he ends up being the Archmage and the Dragon Lord or whatever. So like he's gonna end up being a tight dude. Great, love that. But you still get very worried about what direction he's going to go. Is he actually going to be a good guy? Or is he going to fall down some slippery slope? Like, how far is he going to have to fall before he can climb back to whatever that is? There are so many points in the book where I was genuinely worried about, like, I don't know, is he going to do it?
And
even though you're told that he's going to.
And you're right to be worried because LeGuin comes out fucking swinging.
Yeah.
When he makes that mistake.
And I love that.
So what happens is everybody's a little drunk, a little rowdy. It's after like I think the second year of studies. Ged is like fucking excelling. He's like
But his
the brightest.
friends have graduated
This
up.
massive, like, jubilation festival that only happens every 52
Yes,
years.
Jasper is a
52, that's right.
sorcerer now.
Yeah. So he's seeing other people, including Jasper, get promoted while he's still technically like a first year or whatever. And there's this jubilation, this festival that every 52 years was it?
Yeah, I thought it was so odd. I loved it.
It's weird, right? Like it's one of those things in Earthsea where she talks about how this is just something that every island does. There's some kind of culture that expands past all the other cultures, that there are these little differences, but then everybody seems to have like the same holidays. And really, there's not really, I don't think the word god or gods is mentioned once in the book except for referring to the god kings of Atuan, which are just kind of like two kings of the land that raids Gaunt in the beginning. But nevertheless, there seems to be like a kind of religious fabric throughout all of the different archipelagos.
This may be me misremembering, but like, don't they mention a creator? Or creating power?
So there was, all they say is that Segoy spoke the first words, and then the first island, Ea, which Delaney read, the creation of Ea, the little poem at the beginning of this, came out of the water. So he fucks up. And he does it because it's this jubilation. Everybody's a little drunk, and he has this ambition to be the greatest fucking bad boy sorcerer, whatever. And his rival was just promoted, and Ged still has to wait for his promotion, despite being genius wonder kid. So
Jasper does challenge him.
Mm-hmm. And also, can we mention our boy Vetch at this point?
OG.
The icon.
I love him.
The icon, the dude that's like, hey, let me hold your pet and y'all stop fighting.
Yeah.
The absolute last.
Also, Ged gets a cute pet, and it's really nice. Its name is
It's like a
Hogue.
chipmunk.
Yeah.
I'm an OTech, you're an OTech.
And Vetch is like, give me the O-Tech, we'll be friends.
Yeah.
I like Vetch to me is a dog person.
Yep,
He's just
for
like,
sure.
here, I'll hold
Yes.
your dog while you do
Yes.
something stupid.
So Vetch is like
I don't
the
care
one
if you get hurt.
is like Ged's one actual friend. Everyone else is kind of
I
afraid of him or, irritated by Ged, intimidated by Ged. Vetch is like, I like you. You're cool. Hang out with me. And don't mind Jasper. He is a tit, but I like him too.
I love the moment where Vetch stands in between of the two of them, and he was like, will you leave this foolishness?
Yeah.
Like, come with me. It was never, I'm not going to be your friend, or like nothing was ever petty with him.
Benvolio.
Yeah. There's something Ogion about it, or Agian about him too.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's kind of what we're supposed to see a little bit.
So Ged, just to bring this to its folly, to its conclusion, and I hope, listener, that you've read the book till now, because this is fucking awesome. All of this sort of build-up of Ged making the wrong decisions and the audience going, oh, dude, not great, but also I want to find out what happens, is this. Jasper challenges him, and Ged says, I will summon the spirit of the most famous, beautiful woman, basically Helen of Troy.
Yeah.
I will bring her from the fucking netherworld to come and talk to you, and then you will know what true wizardry and power is, because it's me, motherfucker, and watch. And he does it.
But I love that he does it.
The thing, and something else comes back with her from the other side. It horribly wounds Ged. Yeah, I think it just hurts him, right? Like, nobody else dies.
Vetch tries to run and help.
It latches onto his face and tries to, like, basically suck his soul out, killing, like, digging,
scars
clawing,
him.
Like, physically and also spiritually and mentally. There's like, the implication that it's trying to eat his magic or something.
And try to take him over so that it can, like, possess him.
Trying to eat it. And then the Archmage, the guy that we just met, where Ged, like, understood what the birds were saying just for a second. He saw the Matrix. He saw the Tau. Shows up and gives his life to keep Ged from slipping into the other world and dying for good. This is the Archmage, the most powerful man ostensibly in the entire world, giving his life to save this first year who hasn't even earned his sorcerer's, robes yet, and does so without any explanation. He just passes, and just like that, there's a new Archmage. Ged is unconscious. He can't move. He's unconscious for like months or whatever. He's being tended to very slowly, and the world moves on. Vetch becomes a wizard. Jasper goes somewhere, and people begin like to just live their lives as Ged has completely fucking maimed himself, and the thing that attacked him so brutally is still out there in the world. It's been driven off Roke. We don't know where it is, but it's out there and it's waiting for him somewhere in the world. When Ged wakes up, he's a shadow. He's a shell. He's injured. None of his friends are anywhere near him, and he can barely like walk or move. And even to do magic where he was so confident, like his voice shakes now.
I adore that moment in the book because of the moment that happens as he's summoning the undead. When he like she gives like she wrote this, like, to me, the scariest part of the entire book, which is the thought that Ged has when, like, he does all of this stuff to show off to Jasper, and then he has the moment where it, like, switches in the dialogue, and it's like he doesn't even care about Jasper anymore, right? Like, it's not about Jasper. It's that he can do it, and he has the power to do it, so he should do it. Like he very quickly, like, shifts into this, like, very, very dangerous mindset.
It's almost demonic.
Yeah. I mean,
it's Faustian.
And I do think it is to somewhat mimic what is pulling out. I think we'll get there, right? But like, I do think that line of dialogue is directly linked to the thing that comes out of the abyss. But I love that that's the last thing that happens to him when he's conscious, is that thought. And then when he wakes back up, he is a broken character. A lot of times authors are too safe with their characters, and they're like too precious, and they have plot armor, and like,
now run him through the wood chipper.
Ged has plot armor. He does, right? Like, to some extent, he does have plot armor. How hurt he is and broken. It's not only, oh, I'm scarred physically. I'm scarred magically. The thing that set me apart from other people, I no longer have that anymore. I'm basically just a farm kid again. I basically don't have worth.
Worse,
right?
Because he also is physically weak from months of, like, laying in bed.
Same, bro.
And also, the Archmage is dead, and it's his fault.
Ged says something like, so he gets summoned to talk to the new Archmage, a very vigorous young man named Genscher. Also, it's at this point that you realize that everybody in the book is non-white, which is awesome. Everybody's like coppery red, or Vetch is from the East Reach, and he's black, like sub-Saharan African.
We're in the Mediterranean.
Except for the pillagers.
Oh yeah, the pillagers from the beginning.
The pillagers at the beginning are white, and they're
blonde.
the bad guys.
Yeah, they're all blonde.
But Genscher, if Nemmerly was this very old Archmage, then
testament to Ursula, because she was writing in 1968.
Right.
Yeah, and purposefully did that. Yeah.
I don't think you realize what Ged, skin tone is until like chapter 5 or something like that, which is like 60, 70 pages in or whatever. Anyway, Genscher shows up, and he's like, I'm the new Archmage. I'm young, I'm strong, I'm smart, I'm a wizard, and I'm gonna be around for a long fucking time, and it's your fault that Nemmerly, the greatest wizard of the world, is dead. And Ged says, better that I had died then. And Genscher says, fuck you. How dare you say that? Nemmerly gave his life for yours.
Right.
Who are you to say that you should be dead instead? Really think about that. And that is honestly the kick in the pants, I think, for Ged to start thinking about all the shit that people have been trying to teach him since a giant, which is like, what are you about? Like, what are you trying to do?
And I'll go back to what Andrew said too earlier about him losing everything essentially. I don't think he would have been able to have the hero's journey he had if he hadn't lost it so dramatically.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a sucker in D&D for early levels. I love them. I love characters to be weak, right? I think it's people have to think more when they're weak. You can't just be like, I'm the strongest thing in the room, so I beat its face in, right? And I win, yay. This, to me, is really the start of his prodigal journey. He comes to the Island of Mages, and he's like, hell yeah, I'm the motherfucking best, and Giant, the baller, he says I'm the next Archmage. What's up? Pew, pew, pew. I'm shooting off fireballs, right? Like, and he's having a great time. And then this happens, and we have, like, at least in this book, fallen as far as we can.
And it's
beyond,
it's
like, unbreakable, right? You know what I mean? Like, beyond a breaking point, right? Like, I truly think if he had fallen any farther, foreseeably Archmage wouldn't have brought him back because he would have known, right? I love how, like, omniscient the wizards are in this book, like the high-up ones are.
Yeah.
That it's like you have the wisdom to know, like, but he could still do great things, right? Like,
I
so
also
yes.
love they don't really treat him differently in a class setting. It takes him longer to learn after this happens to him. It takes him more time. He has to go back and relearn things. They don't ever treat him differently. They're just kind of like,
it's only like the younger students that are like, oh, he's weird. Oh, this old man that's like studying with us. We have a 30-year-old in our high school class. No, I know, but you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
But even the Harry Potter complex, they don't do. Like, they don't treat him like he's a chosen one.
No.
Either.
It's like, very realistic.
That's what I love, because to me, that's not what the book is about.
No. Exactly.
So it wasn't relevant. Like, this book is such a journey. I hesitate even being like, this is a wizard school book, because we spend a chapter and a half at wizard school.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and it's gone. Like, it's really cool and it's an awesome concept, but it's not about that. It's about this prodigal journey that Ged is going to go on to find himself and figure out who he is.
I do have to say one of my favorite parts in the whole book happened in this section when Vetch comes to visit Ged finally after he's kind of allowed to in a certain way. Like, his friend, like, people were told essentially, like, give him space. Like, you're not supposed to visit.
Yeah, you can't go in there.
Yeah, just don't. And finally, Vetch visits, and Vetch asks him to come with him and visit him. And my favorite moment in the book was when Ged stood up and Ursula talks about how there was a shadow behind him. And Ged looks at Vetch and he's like, but tell me, what do you see? Like, what was it, Jonah?
It was like, what do you see before you versus what do you see behind you?
No, tell me, when you look at me, what do you see behind me? Because he's so broken from the shadow. And then it was like, oh, well, literally, of course there's a shadow, because that's how shadows work. But it was just so haunting. It was so good.
Yeah, he's like trying to get him to like look forward. He's like, but look at what's behind me.
Yeah, Ged is at the lowest of his low, and who comes to his side but like Vetch, the most stalwart guy, the guy that didn't judge him to begin with and doesn't judge him now.
Yes.
Not only does he show up to like give his support and give over his little pet, the Otak, and say, "Hey, I've been feeding him."
I'm a dog person.
I've been watching your dog, your chipmunk. He also tells Ged his true name. Vetch gives Ged the single greatest gift that anybody can give, which is literally like your soul, really, like the word that is your soul, and it signals entire trust, entire forgiveness, and really entire like hope that you are who I know you are, and you will be who I know you will be.
Such an intimate thing, right?
Yeah,
in the same way we talked about the intimacy
gosh.
of magic in this book setting, but like also like you like it is him giving someone. It would be the equivalent of you giving someone complete power over you.
Yeah,
right. Like
you have the power.
You can puppeteer me.
Yeah.
Right. So there has to be like 100% trust there.
Yeah.
And so like every time this happens in this book series, right, it is so interesting to look at, like, analyze when it happens, why it happens, and like who initiates it. Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
I love that you also have people like because we didn't really talk about this with like O'Giant and like wizards naming people, but like that it is not necessarily just a wizard giving you your name.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we call it, but like what it is really is someone that is so in tune with magic that they know your name without having to like be taught it, right?
They can
like,
see it.
Because we see that in the later books without me saying anything, right?
Yeah.
But we see characters that are like, I just know your name. And it's such an interesting thing every time Ursula brings it into the book, because every time it means so much. That Vetch doing this is one of the things to me that I think allows Ged to move forward.
Yeah.
Totally.
At
Yeah,
all.
that's what I was thinking. I think that it really impacts Ged, and we see that it impacts Ged because he then is catapulted forward. You know, he's like hopeless before, and then Vetch sharing his true name is like, yeah.
The trust that's placed in him. And the love, really. Like, the love that he didn't feel worthy of is the thing that allows him to be worthy of love, which is crazy.
I think it brings up like the big theme to me of one of the reasons I love this book is part of the human journey is to want to be known fully and truly, but yet the fear that also combats that massive joy of being known fully and truly and sharing that with someone is such a yin-yang battle within your own soul. One of the things Jonah says to me all the time is like, I see you, especially when I start to freak out. Like, Jonah's just like, I see you. And it's a very comforting thing, but it's also that moment where there's only so many people in your life that you can let truly see like
vulnerability
that. And the people who are brave enough to be fully known.
The key to happiness and fear.
Mm-hmm, exactly. That's what my big takeaway was at the end
Oh my
of the
God.
book too, but we're not there yet.
We
That
can,
end quote.
we'll probably do this quick, like
The ball of journey happens.
we'll skip through like all the stuff of the Terranon and all that stuff.
Yeah,
but
read the book.
essentially, Ged is a dope-ass wizard. Not only does Vetch trust him with his name, the Wizards of Roke also begin to trust him. It's not like you fucked up forever. It's like, no, we see you, we understand you, you fucked up, and we see that you're changing. And they end up giving him his staff and a small wizard ship on an isle near, I think it's called Crunkus Dilly. No, it's
Yep,
not.
that's it. That's 100% it.
Yeah, it's Crunkus Dilly.
He makes friends, and he has all like these sort of travails as he, basically learns what it is to be a wizard of this craft, and basically to go around helping people, or to be like the local healer, the local helper, the local, bless the houses, bless the thing. And he ends up dealing with a dragon problem because he's fucking strong. We don't even need to go into it, but
He tries to save a child and he can't.
tries to save a child. He tries to save his friend's child.
Oh, that's so hard.
And
The fact that he can't save the child and then immediately after goes and like kills
when the
multiple
father
dragons.
is like, I didn't realize how powerful you were.
Yeah.
Or you're more powerful than I thought after he didn't save his son.
Yeah, I didn't realize you were so powerful.
Yeah.
You could kill dragons, but you couldn't save my son.
And that's when I said why
But
I'm leaking.
That to
while
me
reading this.
is such a good example of like the cost of magic in this world.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Like
Oh
my
we talk
gosh, yeah.
about like D&D terms, right? People throw spells around like crazy, and it's like, I wish I had more spell slots, right? Like
Yeah.
But like
No, it's like insane.
But like if you look at like Ged, right? Like later on in the book, right? We talk about the dangers of shape-shifting because you can get stuck in it.
You can get
You can
stuck.
beast morph and get stuck. And like that's a very, very important concept in the book, and it comes in very important later. There's a difference,
Polymorph only lasts for an hour.
but there's a difference in the exchange rate between that and a soul, and what it takes to pull something back from the ether. And I'm sure like the only way would be to ask Ursula, but like I am curious if Ged lacked the ability or was too afraid to contact Dead.
It's It's an interesting question, and I think part of it is also that this entire time during his sort of pilgrimage and figuring out what it is to be a wizard, he is being hunted by the shadow.
And knows
as soon as he leaves Roke.
Yeah, he's no longer under the protection
hunts
of the Masters, and he is being hunted, or it is at least somewhere in the world, and he knows that the thing that he loosed is after him. Mm-hmm. And I think at least partly the thing with Petchfairy's son, where he sees the little boy's spirit go sauntering off into the afterworld, like running towards death and the unknown, and Gav is like, I'm gonna try to catch this kid. He realizes that waiting for him on the side of life is the thing. I think that's another of his classic I fall down and I'm dead but I'm not kind of moments.
Chalk up another one of those on the scoreboard. I think it's either number 3 or 4.
Hey, he knows when to do them.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, you get him at the right time.
After the dragon fight.
You just go comatose for a little while and it's like, whoa, hey!
But that lets him know that the shadow is following him, and he is literally putting the villages that he stays in danger by staying there. So then he decides, I'm just going to have to keep running, and I can't stay anywhere for
forever.
A long time. Yeah.
He tries to go back to Roke. It literally, the winds won't let him get back into the harbor of Roke. Because they know.
It felt very Jonah from the Bible.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
I loved the explanation when he realized what was happening. It wasn't the island keeping him away. It was the island keeping the thing was so close to him. Mm-hmm. It was so hot on his heels that it was keeping the thing away, and he just couldn't make it in.
Yeah.
And how terrifying
magic.
The hunt becomes in the last half of this book, right? Because I would say or last 2/3, right? Let's say we spend like a third before we unleash this thing.
Exactly.
And then the rest of it is a hunt. It's literally Predator.
He's being chased
right?
by this awful sort of consequence of his actions. Literally the thing that he, fucked up in doing is the thing that chases him and propels him away from people. Yeah, his sin is the thing that drives him away from people for their own benefit. And if he is near them, they're in danger. Until he has all these adventures, you meet, a whole bunch of people, including the daughter of the sorceress makes another appearance, although it's not quite clear. It's a little Easter egg for you if you're paying attention.
Okay, well, let's just skip right over my boy Skjor. I'm just kidding. Skip over Skjor, it's fine.
Well, so the thing is following him, and what he realizes is it's literally able to take other human beings and hollow them out.
And hollow them.
And ride them to him. And one of them...
So good.
As Skjor does so.
I love the slow reveal of that in the book, though. Because you're just like, oh, it's quiet Viking man. And then it's just like...
Nope.
Oh no, it's not.
Oh, no, it's
a hollow out eye man. It's like...
So he is being driven, and all along he's being driven by this question: does this thing have a name? If I could just find its name, what is its name? The dragon that I, basically threatened to stay where he fucking is, or else that I would kill him, told me that this thing has a name. The Archmage says it probably doesn't have a name. I think it has a name. Does it have a name? If only I knew its name. And when it finds him, it says his name.
It knows his name, yeah.
It knows his name, and all he can do is physically run. And there's all these travails, and he meets the sorcerer's daughter. There's the court of the Terranon, which is a whole nother thing. It's like a weird power under the earth. Basically, magic that isn't from a wizard or a witch, but just kind of
just old magic.
Thing. The great old
Back when
magic.
Aslan was
Small
around
side
magic.
That whole subplot just read like an episode of TV to me.
Truly.
If this is not the new Game of Thrones, I don't get it. That was when I was like, I'm so determined to see this on film one day. Because it's going to be amazing.
There was an incredibly whitewashed, horrible version that she despised and wrote 6 or 7 awesome essays in which she's like,
scathing,
look, guys, I had nothing
Studio
to do with
It needs to be
this.
done right.
It wasn't Studio Ghibli, no.
No, it wasn't that one?
No, there's multiple.
Well, no, Studio Ghibli, she wasn't a huge fan of Studio Ghibli one because of the key things that got changed, and she was like, well, not crazy about that, but the other
I have
one
no idea of the other one.
was way worse.
Well, that's why it's been wiped from memory, because I think she obliterated it from orbit.
That's awesome.
Because she was a fucking queen, Ursula K. LeGuin. He's tempted, basically, to sign on to this weird old stone in the bottom of a castle that's like, I can help you fight the thing that follows you. And he's like, no, that's also going to be bad for me.
Can I throw this out real quick? I know we're like ripping through this book, but like I love both the parallels between the Terranon stone and the dragon, because it shows Ged's growth into wisdom.
Yeah.
Right? It shows that like the dragon's like, I could tell you its name, but you would have to like there's a bargain being made, and he's like, I know not to bargain with dragons.
Price.
Right? I have to keep my power over this thing, or else it's going to kill me.
Yeah.
Right? If I become not a wizard with this thing, I'm done for. Same with the Terranon. He's like, but I feel the magic that's coming from that, and it's wrong. And even though it could solve my problem, and 13-year-old Ged would be like, sure thing.
Yeah.
Right? He's like, no, I can't. You can't. No one should be talking to this thing. Nobody should be talking to this thing. And it's what helps him sniff out that plot. We're starting to see like the growth of his wisdom, which I think prepares him for what happens when he returns.
So he runs and runs and runs and takes the form of a bird at the last and flies to Gaunt.
That scene! Well, before the impetus, the thing that causes him to, turn into the bird is, he had washed up. He didn't have a staff anymore. He didn't have, like, anything. But he goes outside of the walls of this palace that he'd been staying at. And, when he had woken up from coma number 5, I think. But when he woke up, he realized that how the Otek wasn't there, much to Sarah's dismay and deep sorrow.
I'm not over it.
I felt dismay too.
She doesn't pull punches.
No.
Thank God.
But so as he leaves and is being chased by the guards of, Lord who has been, hosting him, he runs out and he finds the body of, Haug, the Otek. And also the fact that there were these wild shadow bat things that were also chasing him at this point.
He's fleeing, yeah.
Well,
he's fleeing from all of these things.
And maybe I'm misremembering, but isn't it like the court, like lowly like court magicians that turn into the shadow bats that are chasing them?
Basically, the underlings of this old power, the Terranon, are all like, "Get back here!
Shit up!
You're
It's
tasty."
a crazy wizard bat chase.
Yeah.
He plucks a blade of grass from the ground as he's like holding the corpse of his, longtime pet familiar who he's had for all this time, turns this blade of grass into a wizard staff, turns himself into a hawk and proceeds to wreck shop and then run.
Yep.
Fly as far as he can, as fast as he can.
Losing his mind.
Yeah.
Because when you turn into an animal, you run the risk of just becoming an animal because you're changing your true name. And where does he go?
My boy, he flies
O'Giant.
home. He flies home. He returns home. And I'm going to argue that that's probably the last place he wanted to go the entire story, because it's where he's probably feels the most amount of shame from what he did at the school. It's
But
why I love
O'Giant-
that in his bird form, he flies to O'Giant, the person he would probably, like, the person he would want to most see.
Yes.
But, like, doesn't want to see.
The
right?
most
Like,
accepting the...
It's the prodigal son seeing the father, right? Like,
Right.
like it's literally that moment. And I love how it's presented in the book, because you don't, like, you infer, right? You can infer that this bird that meets O'Giant, but literally the chapter starts and it's like, O'Giant's in the woods.
He's
And you're like,
walking
you were
around.
just in this
hanging
epic
out.
battle. And then it's like, and then O'Giant's feeding his goats, and a bird comes and lands. And the bird looks pretty bad. And O'Giant's like, well, I'm a character that doesn't speak a lot, so I don't have really any dialogue. And he's like, I only speak when it's important.
He says...
He says,
I think I named you.
yes.
Oh, shit.
Incredible.
I think he has something earlier where he's like, wizards don't, like, he doesn't speak much, but when he speaks, it's with importance. And it's like something that needs to be said versus like, I'm just talking to hear myself talk. And I loved that concept.
Well, he's living that Taoist wizard philosophy.
Yes.
Whether it's magic or speech.
Right. But he brings Ged back from being a hawk and revitalizes him and revives him.
Yeah.
And takes care of him, and then says They talk about the spirit that's chasing Ged, and Ged talks about pretty much how his life is hopeless and he's just going to run forever. And O'Giant to me says what should be the title of this book, right? What should be the title on everything. He says, you must turn around. Turn around.
Stop running away.
Stop running away. Yeah, he literally he gives Ged the information that in running, he is giving the thing power. And it is when we start to realize the thing chasing Ged is potentially of Ged's own creation.
Yeah.
Or at least its power is of Ged's own creation.
So we're going to have to call it in just a few, unfortunately, because I love this. And I just want to get to the end.
No, I know. I'm sorry.
No. Guys, I wouldn't change a single thing about this record.
You're a liar.
And we got 17 more comas.
A couple more comas. There's a couple more things, but Ged eventually begins to chase the thing. And he becomes the hunter. And meeting it out on the open water, it turns around and flees from him. And then the book goes into fucking overdrive as he chases it to the end of the fucking earth. He sees Vetch. They all hang out. Vetch has a cute little sister. They talk about magic and Taoism.
He just knows her name.
He knows her name. He brings it up accidentally in conversation. Yeah, she reminds me of a willow tree. And Vetch is like, you know her true name is Willow, right?
Right.
And Ged's like, oh, sorry.
But that's why O'Giant was like, Ged's gonna be the best.
Because he's fucking in tune.
Because he can see names.
Yes.
So he chases this creation, his own death,
Vetch
really.
insists on going with him, by the way.
And
Vetch is a boy.
Because he's the best.
They sail beyond the island known as Last Land. Because beyond it, there's no more fucking islands. It's just ocean. And magic stops working because you don't know the names of the things out there. The winds aren't the same. And they keep sailing out into absolute nothingness. Just water, water, water.
Where no one has gone before. And Vetch is like, are you sure? And he's like, yes, my shadow is here.
I love Vetch at the end of this book. He's just like, you
I'm
sure?
in.
And Ged's like, yeah. And he's like, okay, fuck me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Trust
Yeah.
Okay.
He's literally Lethal Weapon. I'm getting too old for this shit.
Yeah.
And then he does it. I love it.
So Ged chases it to the dry land. The land that is where he saw the little boy running away, Petchfairy's son. The land, essentially, of the dead, where there is a low stone wall that separates our world and the world of the dead. And he confronts his shadow. He confronts this thing. He still doesn't know its name. And when he reaches it, it finally stops running and begins to reach towards him. He names it Ged. He names it his own name.
And it's not that he realizes its name. He names it.
I think so. Or claims it, right?
Claims it, yeah.
Claims it as a part of his own
Claims
soul.
what he feared, I think.
I think he knows it's him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The end of that book is so open up to interpretation, but I think part of the dialogue between him and O'Giant of being like, you have to turn around and face the thing, and O'Giant being like, everything has a name.
Everything.
Right? Everything does. I think there's some part of him that by the time we've gone through the most beautiful chapter in the book that I can think of, which is when he's alone on the island with the two old people,
which we
because it's
skip.
Incredible. It's just an incredible chapter. We don't even talk about it, but
just read the book. Please read the book. I beg you to read the book.
By the time he gets there, to me, listening to it, it felt like two old friends meeting. Weirdly enough, right? And it shouldn't feel like that after all the hunting that is in the back half of this book, right? But it felt like two old friends, and I think it's because, at least for me and where I am in my walk in life, right? To me, it felt like Ged accepting his faults.
Yes.
And that gave him power over those faults because those faults no longer ruled him. He didn't live in fear, right? He didn't live in shame. Ugh.
My favorite quote of the whole book is the one after that happens.
So I think we'll close out with this quote and any last thoughts. Thanks so much for reading this book and chatting about it with us. It really meant a lot to me, you guys. I love this book.
It's a good one.
I didn't know if that was for us or the listeners.
Well,
both.
I include them because I hope that they've listened to my begging that they've read this book.
I mean, if they've listened to the past, over an hour, I would hope that maybe.
This is, I think, the thesis, and it always sticks with me. It did when I was 14, 13, whenever it was, and I think it will stick with me my entire life.
And it's stuck with me specifically to where I am in my life right now, and, just navigating the world as it is in the current times.
In these turbulent times.
Ged had neither lost nor won, but naming the shadow of his death with his own name had made himself whole. A man who, knowing his whole true self, cannot be possessed or used by any power other than himself, and whose life therefore is lived for life's sake, and never in the service of ruin or pain or hatred or the dark.
Read this book!
If you're like me and you don't love reading, listen to it, right? Like, I will say, it took me a little bit to train my brain to listen to an audiobook. It always does. Yeah, it is such a solid book, and just alone, the philosophies in it are so good, right? Like, sometimes books have shitty things.
Yeah.
Right? That they're trying to say without actually saying it. It's just because somebody believed something shitty that was writing it. It's fine. This, to me, is one of those books that, I read it and I was like, it was similar to how I felt when I read Les Mis, where I was just like, I feel like a better person in some ways because of the quotes I took time to write down. It's just, I think it's a really, really incredible book. Yeah, if in these terrible times you're like, man, I just want to read something with a little bit of magic that is wizards battling their own self issues. Instead of it's like if Gandalf was fighting the Balrog, but the Balrog was the fact that he cheated on his wife, right?
Or fear of death or something.
Or fear of death, right? Or anything, right? But it's so cool that so much of the conflict in this book is internal. It's probably because I'm a sucker for Superman, but I love the characters that have all the power, and the real question is do you choose to use it? Read it.
My last thought is that in fantasy, the world is the character. The world is the character's internal journey. And I think that is a much more satisfying way to look at my life and the life of the people that I know and the people that I love, is that what they are doing is the point. And they are the point. And we are the point. And there's nothing that we can do to really fuck that up for ourselves, except make it hard and make our lives more closed off, more quiet, more muted, more pained, and more silent. I love this book because it is a journey in the same way that our lives are. I'm a wizard, basically. Basically. No.
I knew that was coming. I knew it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And going back to that last quote I just read, I think the themes of knowing your true self is to know the world, to know everything around you, the good and the bad, and to see in even the people you may not like yourself, see yourself in the people that bring out the worst in you. And I feel like Ursula was so good at writing that and bringing that to life. And it's a great thing to think about.
I'm just excited to read more of these.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, coming out of this book, I am so excited to see what the rest of the world has to offer, because while we've seen so much of it in this book, I cannot wait to find out how more of it unfolds.
All these things, beautiful. Find your vetch. Don't do life alone. Find your vetch. Love your vetch. Show yourself to them fully and don't regret it.
Hell yeah.
Love your vetch.
Love your vetch.
Long live
Protect your OTAG.
Protect them! Give them armor!
Raise their armor class.
Give them more hit points.
Give them buffs.
Watch the sun now, yeah. This is the way you are. She shines like the moon. This far from me down.